What the comment section forgot about compassion. There's a particular energy that takes over online when someone makes a mistake, a kind of collective sharpening like knives being drawn out of pockets all at once. Someone said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, and now it's time. I've watched this play out more times than I can count. Person makes a misstep, careless, thoughtless, sometimes genuinely hurtful, and within minutes it's screenshotted, shared, and handed to an audience with no relationship to anyone involved. The original moment becomes almost irrelevant. What matters now is the trial. And often, the person has already apologized sincerely, publicly to the people it actually affected. Still, somewhere else, strangers debate whether that apology even counts. Was it real remorse or damage control? Does this person deserve forgiveness? Is grace even appropriate here? I keep coming back to two books when I think about moments like this: The Four Agreements and The Art of Happiness. Lately, I've been noticing how much they have to say together about exactly this kind of moment. Be impeccable with your word. Don Miguel Ruiz's first agreement is simple: be impeccable with your word. Use language in the direction of truth and love, not as a weapon, not as gossip. He calls gossip the heaviest curse in human culture, so normalized we don't register it as harm. We call it conversation, we call it accountability. But real accountability is direct. It happens between the person and whoever was affected, and it tends to be quiet and over relatively quickly once it's sincere. What I see online instead is the compulsion to keep it going past that point, to make sure everyone gets a turn weighing in on a stranger's character, often based on nothing but a screenshot stripped of context shared by someone who didn't feel safe enough to use their own name. There's something almost sacred about the moment a person says, "I was wrong, I'm sorry," and means it. And yet, I've watched that moment treated over and over, not as a door someone walked through toward repair, but as an invitation for more. Compassion as a skill, not a mood. This is where the art of happiness comes in. The Dalai Lama makes a case that's almost radical in its simplicity. Compassion isn't a feeling reserved for people we already like. It's a skill, a practice, and the most direct path to our own happiness. Not because compassion makes us feel virtuous, but because the alternative, judgment, resentment, the low hum of "that person is bad and I am not like them," is exhausting to maintain. Every time we narrate a stranger's inner life with total confidence, "he only apologized because he got caught," we're practicing a way of relating to people that requires staying vigilant, suspicious, a little angry. That costs something, not to them, to us. The Dalai Lama describes training the mind like a muscle, gently, repeatedly through small choices, including the ones nobody's watching, with people we'll never meet about situations that have nothing to do with us. The anonymity problem. A lot of the loudest moral certainty in these threads come from people unwilling to put their own name on it. There's an irony in calling for someone's character to be publicly tried while posting from behind an avatar, guaranteeing you'll never face the accountability you're demanding of someone else. Ruiz's teaching isn't only about lying, it's about not slinging words from somewhere you can't be reached. Often that's exactly what the person being criticized has just done: used their name, took the post down, apologized publicly, knowing it would be screenshotted and might not be enough, and did it anyway because it was right regardless of the outcome. That kind of impeccability is rare and worth noticing instead of treating it as an opening bid. Where compassion and happiness meet. Compassion isn't really about the other person, or not only. It's about the inner environment we're building for ourselves. A mind oriented toward compassion is calmer, more spacious, less reactive. A mind oriented toward judgment is tighter, more defended, more easily triggered. Over time, those produce very different lives, regardless of what's happening out there. When I see someone extend grace to a stranger who's clearly trying, who messed up, owned it, and is visibly attempting to do better, I don't read that as being naive. I read it as someone choosing the version of this interaction that lets them keep their own peace intact. And when I see the opposite, the relentless parsing of motives, the refusal to let an apology be enough, I don't think that's strength. I think it's someone carrying something heavy and setting it down on a stranger instead of putting it down at all. The pattern of behavior defense. A common refrain in these threads: this isn't about one thing, it's about the pattern, as if the screenshot is evidence in a larger case the internet has quietly been building. But a pattern is something you can only perceive through sustained, direct relationship, history, context, repetition you've witnessed yourself. What the internet usually has is a single artifact plus a story someone else decided to tell about what it means. Once enough strangers agree on that story, it feels like evidence of a pattern with no actual basis beyond the original artifact. That's not a pattern. That's a verdict reverse engineered to feel like one. And the internet has appointed itself judge and jury for situations it has no real information about, which isn't productive for anyone. Nothing gets resolved. The person at the center usually isn't even in the conversation. It's strangers performing judgment for other strangers about someone who isn't in the room and calling it accountability. Where intuition comes in. When I hear gossip about someone I know or I don't, my instinct isn't to sort it into believable or not. It's to extend compassion in two directions, toward the person being talked about and toward the person doing the talking. Toward the target because a flattened secondhand version of a moment is never the whole story. Toward the messenger, too, because gossip is so often less about the person being discussed and more about something unresolved in the person telling it: hurt, fear, a need to feel aligned with a group. That doesn't mean believing everything they say. It means recognizing the impulse to share usually comes from somewhere, and that somewhere is rarely just objective truth for the public good. And then I withhold judgment until I have a direct interaction, not a screenshot, not a secondhand account, an actual lived exchange. Intuition isn't a verdict generating machine that runs on rumors. It needs real information, energy, presence, the way someone actually shows up. Until that happens, the most honest position is, I don't know. Uncomfortable, especially when the whole comment section seems certain, but I'd rather sit there than borrow someone else's certainty about a person I've never met. The feeling of certainty. There's one more piece, the role emotion plays, not as a side effect of the pile-on, but as its engine. I think often about an episode of the NPR show Invisibilia about a truck driver involved in an accident that killed a child. He wasn't found responsible, by all accounts a tragic, unavoidable collision. Afterward, he sued the grieving family for his emotional distress, and won. My first reaction was outrage, but the point wasn't the legal outcome, it was how real his distress was, and how completely that didn't make the outcome feel right to anyone watching. His suffering was genuine, it also wasn't a reliable guide to what justice looked like for the family who lost a child. Both things were true at once. That's the part I think about with online pile-ups. The intensity of a feeling tells you nothing about whether it's pointing you towards something fair. The anger in these threads is often completely real, and because it's felt so strongly, it gets treated as information as if intensity itself proves the reaction is deserved. But emotions respond to everything we're already carrying: old grievances, a bad day, a deeper distrust this post just happened to activate. Real feeling, unreliable compass. Same stakes, just smaller in a comment section. What this asks of us. Being impeccable with your word doesn't mean staying silent. It means asking, before adding to the pile, is this true? Is this necessary? And what is it actually for? Kindness, not in the soft conflict avoidant state, but in the sense of, does this move things toward repair? Does it add anything I actually know to be true? Or am I just here because something in me lit up and I mistook that feeling for a verdict? The person who apologizes probably won't remember most of the people who couldn't let it go, but they'll remember that they said sorry and meant it, and that some people quietly let that be enough. That's the kind of word that actually does something. And the compassion it takes to offer that, it turns out it's not just good for them. According to the two books I keep coming back to, it might be one of the better things we can do for ourselves, too. If any of this stirred something, a tightness around old judgments you're ready to set down, or a curiosity about what it might feel like to move through transitions with more grace than the world tends to model, that's the kind of work I sit with people in as a transition doula. You don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do it with the same harshness the internet has normalized. If you'd like to support this work, the most meaningful ways are simple. Subscribe, share, to keep these reflections coming. Either way, I'm glad you're here.